The law of love. Listen in as this expert psychologist reacts to NFL great Steve Young. I'm Dr. Paul Jenkins. I'm a professional psychologist with 3 decades of clinical experience. Most people remember Steve Young as a phenomenal NFL quarterback who won the Super Bowl for the San Francisco 49ers. But they don't realize that he's also an expert on love. Here are 3 powerful points that Steve Young made in his book, The Law of Love, that in my opinion are spot on from a psychological perspective. One of the main points that Steve makes in this book is that the law of love is seeking another's healing with no expectation of return. I think a lot of us have an intuitive sense that really loving someone needs to be unconditional, implying that there's no expectation that we're going to receive anything in return. I think parents are really good at this, typically, because little children, especially babies and infants, aren't yet capable of reciprocating the kind of love and service that a parent gives. There's a concept, a powerful model in positive psychology called Happynomics, and it's based on the idea that our happiness is tied to how well or how often we serve or create value for others. Now, this has an economic effect too, because when you get really good at serving other people, it actually creates an economic return. That's what business is all about. In fact, no business even legitimately exists unless it truly creates value for other people. So that's how our own happiness is tied to economics. When we look at the way Steve Young is talking about serving, seeking another's healing with no expectation of return, that's based on a powerful psychological principle that we have to be serving others in order to have our own happiness and success. Years ago, I was working with a young mom who had just lost her husband to a tragic accident. This young mom had several little kids, and this was a very difficult time of her life, as you can imagine. People showed up from the family, from the community, to help her and to lift her and to serve her and support her, to help out with the kids, to bring over meals. And this was so needed at the time when her husband had passed away. After a few months, she became depressed. Now, there's a difference between grieving, which is a normal human experience, and the depression that she was beginning to experience that was outside of the grief and the grieving process that she had when her husband died. I shared with her this idea that serving others is really at the root of our own happiness. And she realized, oh, I've been receiving service. I haven't been giving service. We started to take a little inventory of all of her strengths, the things that she knew and that she could do to serve others around her, even in the midst of this difficult time. As she started to identify how she could serve others and actually show up and do that, her depression resolved. Now, does that sound magical? It's not magical. You already know the importance of service. You've learned it in your human experience, haven't you? As Steve Young pointed out in his book, when we seek the healing or well-being or happiness or success of others, it's actually the fastest way that we can receive that for ourselves. And that's a paradox. The paradox being, when we seek nothing in return, we are more likely to receive the thing that we might have sought to receive in the first place. This creates a real abundance in the flow of human energy. We usually refer to that as happiness. Are you finding this conversation interesting? If you are, would you please take a moment to click that subscribe button right here and then hit the notification bell too, so that you'll be in the loop. Here's another point that Steve made that I thought was really interesting in the book. The law of love provides a counterbalance to entropy. That probably deserves a little explanation. And I'm an old science geek. My first major in college was chemical engineering. I really like to get into the science and the physics behind things. And the law of entropy is something that I remember from my physics days. It's from Newtonian physics. It's the second law of thermodynamics. The law of entropy states that everything in our physical world progresses toward a more disorganized state. The best way to visualize this, picture yourself holding a jar of marbles and then dropping that jar on a concrete floor. What do you think is going to happen? Those marbles, the glass will break, the marbles will scatter. It goes toward a more disorganized state. If it ever goes the other direction, we think we're watching it backwards. Have you ever seen those videos where someone comes up out of a pool feet first and lands on a diving board? You know you're watching it backward, because the law of entropy is that that's never going to happen. Things always go toward a more disorganized state, not a more organized state. Now, why did I notice this point? Because the law of love provides a counterbalance to the law of entropy. This gets directly to the heart of the main model that I teach in all of my coaching and training about positive psychology. If you want a copy of that model, go to the URL on the screen. I'll give you a free color copy of this, drpauljenkins.com/themodel. You'll see on this model that the top part is called creation. Humans are creative beings. That's easy to see when you look around you and see some of the amazing things that have been created right where you are. Humans are creators. Creation implies counterbalancing the law of entropy, because as we create something, we're bringing things into a more organized state. And it's in our very nature to do that. When Steve Young pointed out that the law of love is a counterbalance to the law of entropy, that made all kinds of sense to me, because I know that this is part of what we do as humans. We are creative beings. And here's one of the other main points that Steve made that I think is just spot on. He talked about the law of love as progressing from a preparatory track to a finishing track. The preparatory track being transactional in nature and the finishing track being more relational in nature. As Steve was describing this, I thought immediately about the moral development model that we use in all of our parent coaching programs at Live on Purpose in my practice. Let's get you a copy of this model too. If you'd like to see this up close and personal, go to the URL on the screen, drpauljenkins.com/stages. In Steve's book, he was referring exactly to this very model in different terms. When we're raising our kids, for example, we have to teach them first very transactional things, like do this, get that. Don't do this or that will happen. It's very cause and effect. It's very transactional. And as we move through the development of our children, as they gain maturity, we have to back off of that transactional approach and become more relational. And Steve nailed that in his book. I've hit on several points that from my perspective are spot on in Steve Young's book, The Law of Love. From a psychological perspective, this guy's on it. Are you ready to learn more about the psychology behind common themes like love and service and positivity? Come join us at go.liveonpurposecentral.com.